Let me pull this over so you don't have to stare at it.
I don't have any citations for the paper. I just have the references. Is that fine? If I send that to them, like to that person like that?
I'd say work on it a little. Howdy, everybody. I'm so used to not seeing in person the people that I not see in person all the time. It's so nice to see new people I don't see in person.
That's why my video is off. You see me all the time.
Are you and I going to get interference?
Sure.
Hello, everyone. It's good to see some familiar faces that I haven't seen in a while. And a few I'm trying to recognize behind the mask, or at least one. I think when we're walking around campus, we need to have this little Zoom box name tag. That would make things easier. When I see a student that I haven't seen in a few semesters walk by, it's like, oh, is that who I think that was? Well, I think we might as well get started. People, of course, can come and go as they need to, but we don't have a real formal agenda today. The council came up with some questions yesterday that we can start with, but certainly if there's something else that is worth talking about, I think we can make detours. I think the first question kind of on our mind is just what's our thoughts on this type of convention? Kind of with the thought that in the future we hopefully won't have a pandemic, but is there takeaways from this that were useful, or is this just making the best of a bad situation? Just what's your thoughts about today and last night?
I'm not 100% convinced that this is a regular maneuver we want to engage in. While I enjoy being able to, quote unquote, be home, I honestly feel the conversations I have in hallways, between sessions, over lunch, end up teaching me more when I'm at a conference than this does. I feel still really very disconnected. Although this is my first KME conference, I felt that about the several conferences that I've gone to in the past few weeks that have all been held over virtual meetings. I'm also not 100% sure I liked using Sococo as a method for managing Zoom, but it's only because it was my first opportunity to use it.
It's just complicated.
Who else? Agreed, disagreed? By the way, maybe it might be helpful whenever when you have a comment, just introduce yourself and say where you're from. So Joshua, where are you from?
Pennsylvania Upsilon, Seton Hill University,
Great.
just outside of Pittsburgh.
Okay. To those of, well, I'll wait a moment. I think a few people are connecting to audio. To those of you who might have just joined us, we just started. The first question on the table is just, how's the convention going? And is there anything about this environment that is worth keeping for future non-pandemic years?
I was gonna, I'm Beth McNamee. I am with Kansas Delta, and at least I think it's Delta. But my thought was, this is the first conference I've actually been to since the pandemic, and at least Sococo like tried to replicate what we do in conferences. Yes, we're still a little bit disconnected, but at least for now, with us not being able to be together, this was better than nothing. I felt good about Sococo. It took a little while to learn that if you're talking with your microphone and your camera in a room and then decide to go to Zoom, you gotta make sure you turn it off before you hit Zoom. Otherwise there's a feedback, and I don't know that everybody kind of got that.
And that's a problem with how the mathdepartment.org people are running Sococo. If they put the Zoom links in a different way, as soon as you join Zoom, it would kill your microphone and sound in Sococo. I've done Sococo through AIM, and when they do it right, which is not how they're doing it, it's much more seamless. You go into a, like, when people come into this room, it would have automatically said, hey, there's a Zoom active, and spirit you off to Zoom rather than having to click on that special link. So the experience has not been optimized for what it can do.
I think we're all in a learning process, though. I think they did a very good job setting things up. I don't want to put that down. I'm just like, oh yeah, we have to remember to do this.
Hi, this is Brian Dawson, Tennessee Gamma, Union University. And I really enjoyed the Sococo platform for the informal times when we're chatting, getting together, just, talking with others. I thought it worked fairly well. I was surprised.
I would actually agree with that. I'm sorry, I'm on video on one computer and microphone on another in a classroom. No, I'm not muted, right? You can hear me? Okay. Our group were meeting in one room, and we kind of congregated in the Theta room because there wasn't an Alabama Theta room. They kind of got confused about the chapter lettering. But we had people wander in from other places. So we had a really good conversation with somebody from Emporia State, and they've been kind of chatting back and forth with us. Gabe has been chatting with our folks. So it's been kind of fun. So I think for the limitations, it's been better than just watching Zoom things, although we really do miss traveling and actually being with people. So we hope we can do that, but maybe there are some aspects we can use in the future. I just know from the back end that planning this kind of thing, especially if we were trying to do both virtual and in person, that there are lots of issues with that we could consider.
Jared Burns, PA Upsilon. I just wanted to say that I commend the organizers. I thought this was very good, very well executed. I have gone to a couple virtual things, and this was pulled off very well. I thought it was relatively easy to find things and to navigate between rooms. The Sokoko has a little bit of a learning curve, but I just wanted to share my general filter criteria that I've been sharing with people for all future meetings, which is that I believe that moving forward, you should only have in-person meetings if you're offering food. And so so that's what I've been saying, is that if you're going to feed somebody, then I'll show up. So use in whatever way you need to.
At least coffee.
So Jared, is this your first KME convention?
No, this is my second.
Yeah, so you know, we usually do have lots of food.
Oh, I know. That's why I was sharing that. I know that the checkbox is checked for here.
Yeah, I
I
missed the banquet part of this. That was one thing we couldn't duplicate, so.
In terms of, being in person or being online, I guess somebody mentioned the part about traveling somewhere. I liked the traveling because I really got to know the students better. I actually teach the lower level math classes, and so getting these math majors and getting to learn about them a little bit more was really fun for me. So I'd rather be in person, is what I'm saying. But Sokoko and everything that's happened, I was very impressed and happy with how it ran.
Well, I have to say the credit for how it's been run goes to Rhonda, Don, and mathdepartment.org. They're the ones who have done the 99% of the work on it, I think. So, yeah.
Yeah, this is Mitch Keller at Iowa Gamma Morningside in Sioux City. I'll echo a lot of the comments about, actually traveling with students, you get to know them. I think the other benefit when students go to a conference is they get to talk in person with other students from other institutions. And it sounds like a few of you have had that sort of organically happening through Sokoko, but I think you see more of that at an in-person meeting. They're much more likely to go up to someone after their talk or at lunchtime and say, hey, I saw your talk. I thought that was really interesting, and have that sort of interaction that I think for most of them, it's their first time going to a conference, or it could be. And so I think there's a big value to having an in-person component, even if maybe there's a way to have some virtual options for people to participate. Yes, and my one of my kitties is making an appearance, so.
One thing that we were impressed by with the registration list is that there are a lot of chapters that registered for the virtual conference who have never been to an in-person conference. And I don't know if the folks from Hawaii Alpha ever made it here or not, but they were the first ones to register. And as far as I know, Hawaii Alpha has never been to an in-person conference. So that's kind of a cool thing.
It was interesting. I think it was Don, when he emailed me about something, said the first KME convention he ever went to was actually here at Morningside in 1970 something. And I don't know that anyone from Morningside has gone for 20 years or more at this point. So it's kind of an interesting cycle of things for some of us.
I might be curious, just with a show of hands, and if you don't have your camera on, you can use the little, I think there's a raise hand function, isn't there? Maybe just a show of hands, if we do an in-person conference next year, would you assuming the finances or whatever worked out, would you make an effort to attend if we did an in-person conference? Just how many are in that category? How many would definitely do a, even if it is in person, how many would definitely prefer not to travel, but that if it was only virtual, that they would do that instead? If you didn't raise your hand before, anyone in the virtual only category?
Are those two
Too
different
early to
options?
know, for me to know. It's too early for me to know.
Yeah. And I guess we're really saying 2 years away in some ways for a national convention, but so I guess John, you have a question or just voting? I'll assume.
He's written it in the chat.
Yeah, true. Things are still bad virtual. Yeah. So I guess I'm optimistic that 2 years from now this will not be a necessity. But David alluded to it. What's our thoughts on trying to do both? Is that worth pursuing, or does that make it worse for everybody? It's obviously there's things you just can't do online that you can do in person. The one benefit of the way we did it this year is we're all together, right? So we're all in Sococo, we're all in Zoom together. I think it would be a different experience if we tried to do both, but maybe for a chapter that just wouldn't be able to travel 1,000, 2,000 or more miles, maybe this gives them a chance to attend. I don't know, just walk me through your thoughts on if that's even worth attempting or not.
I'll chime in, Brian. Since we have the structure of every other year having the national meeting and then the regional meetings every other year, the regional meetings, at least in some regions, have not been that well attended. So perhaps we could experiment with some regions opting to do a virtual regional convention to see if they can build up participation, because it is cheaper, and not having to travel might make some more likely to attend. And so perhaps you could do, say national will do it in person, but on some of the regions, we might try those virtually.
Brian, can I chime in? And maybe that might be exactly the other way around. It's much easier to travel locally than it is to travel nationally. While I agree that the national convention would have a bigger draw, it is unquestionable that, Hawaii is not going to get to the mainland fairly cheaply. I'm going to get to Frostburg State much easier than I am going to get to California. But that might be the reason to reverse it and put the locals in person and nationals virtually. My other concern is that I really think we would still need a dedicated coordinator for virtual behavior, some sort of, a person in the room to act as the Zoom moderator, to ask the questions. It's the same thing with a hybrid classroom. You need somebody monitoring the back channel other than just the instructor, who's talking to the room and the camera and all of it. And that's a bad thing to put on the student presenters if they're live and virtual.
I just wanted to say, and I don't know how many other people I speak for, if the national was held in Hawaii, I'm pretty sure I would try to attend.
You and I can sleep on my brother's couch in separate spots on the couch.
I had something to say, and that is that I have been teaching hybrid this whole fall and spring, where I go in and there's people online, and I have hardly any students coming in, and I would feel bad if we do a whole convention where we have people coming in and online and the same sort of thing happens.
One thing I'll mention too, Brian, you'll hear more with the treasurer's report later, but we're doing quite well financially since we don't have the expenses we used to have with the Pentagon. And we've been trying as a national council over the last decade probably to use more of the money to help chapters travel. One thing to consider for the next biennium is that instead of just having 2 years of initiation fees, would have 4 years of initiation fees to get credit for towards travel. Plus, we've been in the habit of adding a sort of bonus amount for travel to national conventions and even to regional conventions. So I would think that future officers will keep that in mind and try to find financial ways to help chapters travel, since we definitely like that better. But I agree that there are some ways we might try some hybrid things maybe.
So you're recommending Hawaii Alpha for 2023 because we'll have 4 years worth of.
I'll be there. Yeah. I'm there.
I also think it's a good idea to have a virtual option, but not at the same time. So either all seated or all virtual. So if you have a region where an in-person is not going to make, like you don't have enough registrations, you could change that to a virtual option. But I don't think it's fair to the student presenters to have them try to navigate both. And I think it limits the interaction with the students. If there's only half of the students actually there and then there's half online, those pairs aren't going to mingle together. You know, the in-person is going to mingle with in person, and then the online is going to mingle with the online. And so the engagement, I think, is going to be much lower. And so I think for a national one, if we could do in person, that would be great. But I think that what happens if we do hybrid and we have 60 people online and 40 people in person? You know, like what are the logistics of that? That could kind of be a wreck in some ways.
One thing that might be interesting would be to like stream the keynote address and let chapters who can't come be able to watch the keynote address and maybe have, you know, somebody in the room who will raise their questions if they want. They give them a little bit of connection. Two things. I agree with you, Diane. I think it for the student presenters, either if they're there or they're not there, it creates a weird experience, but it might create a little more tie to the national organization if the keynote were something that were available.
Arnold, did you have a question or comment?
Yeah, I'd like to comment. I'm from Michigan Beta, retired, but I appreciate Cynthia letting some of the former national officers let us know this was going to happen. Really enjoyed all the talks today, and I want to thank everyone so much. I certainly worked with Rhonda and Bob Bailey and Cynthia and Brian. It's just a great organization, so I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Well, we're really glad you could make it, and some of the other officers. I see Bob Bailey is here, and Mark Hamner is here, and Daniel, who was here this morning, is still here. Did I miss anyone? So
Harold's in the room, but I can't get him to click on join the Zoom. But the HLT email is Harold.
Okay.
Cynthia, did you say he's in the room with you?
He's in the Hypatia room,
Oh,
but
okay.
he hasn't clicked on. I got him to get that far, but
Okay.
I can't get him to click on that presentation icon to join the Zoom.
And I suppose a varying level of technological facility therefore makes a big difference as to how well attended things are.
So for those of y'all who we've had a few join us here just in the last few minutes, the question has really been kind of a general one in terms of we have a virtual convention and should we keep doing virtual conventions? Should we move to hybrid in the future? So those who can't travel as easily because of finances or distance of time, they can attend along with others who can. Should we have separate conventions? There's a suggestion of regionals where maybe one region is online and one regional is in person. So then people have a choice. Or maybe vice versa, do the national online and regionals in person. Just curious if you just arrived, if you want to weigh in on any of those things, or just on how you thought today has gone. I've been trying to monitor the chat. I think it's mainly been comments, but if I miss a question, let me know. I see John does ask, how do the costs of passing for digital hosting versus physical host facilities compare? Math department isn't free. Yeah, mathdepartment.org, it's $30 a person per avatar, basically. And so the National Council decided that we wanted to make this convention as accessible as possible. So we picked up 25 of that 30. And I don't know, maybe if the numbers got big enough, there might be a discount. I don't remember, but then they of course cover the Zoom fees and things for the most part. There might be a few other things in there, but compared to paying for officers to travel and chapter stipends to travel and speaker travel for a keynote speaker wherever they might be flying from, I think this has been even with some no-shows, we've definitely had some no-shows. Even then, David, isn't it fair that this is still a much cheaper conference? Yeah, if we had a conference on the Pacific Coast or Hawaii, I'm sure my students would start fundraising a little more urgently than they normally do.
What about the option of, because I did more talking about the regional conferences that we have a conference for each region, but not every region that conference actually makes and runs every other year. What if we added to each regional year an online one? So you could either choose to go to your region or you could choose to go to the online one. So not every region that didn't make had their own separate online one, but that was just an addition to the list of conferences. So that way, if we had a region where maybe only 2 chapters signed up and it wasn't going to work out, we could, ask those individuals if they wanted to instead attend an online option. And that might be a good idea for, at the very least, next year, just until we really figure out what's going on and how things are gonna progress.
I agree. I think if we're gonna do the split, I think having one online conference makes more sense than organizing multiple ones. I will say that last year we were on pace to have 5 regional conventions. Pretty much every, we have one region out west that basically only has one or 2 chapters, but for our other 5, they all had ones planned. So it was kind of a shame that the pandemic hit when it did. Too bad it couldn't have waited one more month. But although I'm curious, some of those regional conventions are tied to MAA conferences. I'm going to put Adam, and I can't remember what other region might be like that. I'm going to put Adam on the spot. What's your thoughts? Does it work well to have that kind of pairing that kind of saves some of that planning, or would an online KME only convention be better than a joint meeting with MAA. Any thoughts on that? Or from anyone else who might be in that situation?
Historically, for Great Lakes region, it had worked pretty well for the in-person conferences, because you're traveling to one conference. You can get a van load of kids there and back. Cuts down a little bit on planning. The online thing, we're all fairly new to this, so it would depend on finding host institutions, because even with an online conference, you have to have somebody host the thing, right? Somebody's bandwidth is taking the brunt of it. So it's something that'll be interesting for next year. But yeah, how's everybody else's doing?
A quick question about the idea of hosting the regional convention along with an MAA sectional. Does that mean it would only work if the MAA sectional is at a college that has a KME chapter?
That's what they've done previously. But I'm still tracking down some of the which schools have a KME chapter and which schools don't, for the MAA possibilities. But yeah, if an MAA conference, a sectional conference, isn't happening, then there might be an AMS sectional conference that's happening, or an AMTE, or any of the other alphabet soups. So if we can pair up, it helps in the planning.
For us in Kansas, it'd be a little bit difficult because we've got the Kansas section, but then North Central is much bigger than that. And so you'd have to coordinate. I mean, if we tried to do it year in and year out, we'd have to coordinate it with other sections, and it would just really get complicated. And sometimes it's nice to have two different options for our students to go to. I mean, because sometimes, even the national is sometimes closer than maybe our section meeting is, and so I think just having more opportunities is better than fewer.
I think the North Central region here contains parts of 8 MAA sections, just counting quickly on the map.
Yeah,
And
Southeast is the opposite of that. Southeast is so large that the MAA sections sort of swallows KME chapters. And when we've tried to have things in conjunction with MAA sections, when I was the regional director, there would be 3 people come by or something like that. It's just too big an event to try to do something. So it seemed, but it's worth trying, I think.
And John posted in the chat, seems like his region's had the same problem.
Well, in one year, we even, as you might recall, with the national conference, even had a kind of almost a joint meeting, because Daytona Beach, they had Embry-Riddle, they had their own student-led conference, or student presenting conference, and so basically we had kind of dual sessions, but that seemed to work pretty well, because it was really a joint conference. It wasn't just here's the MA conference and then KME tagging along. So, but every region, I suppose, is different, and directors have to decide what makes sense for their particular region. So, last call for thoughts on this topic. We have a few other things we can talk about, but I want to make sure we've gotten everyone's thoughts.
Yes, I like Diane's idea of having, say, next year, having regional conferences that people go to for the most part, and then maybe one option of a virtual conference. The other thing I wanted to say is that we don't know where we will be in a year. There may be people next year that would really like to travel but need some extra mitigation, like help in finding a hotel in which where the hotel makes extra efforts to be sure that the rooms are well ventilated, have good ventilation in any meeting rooms that we're in. Things like this, so that people that, I mean, we just don't, we're in flux. We don't know how well the vaccines are going to work. Hopefully they're going to work very well. It looks like it, but there's an element of uncertainty. I'm hoping that in 2 years that things will really be back to normal, but it seems like in a year, I mean, a year ago, I would have not thought that this year would be happening. So I'm just saying maybe we need to have an eye towards possible, if we do have in-person conventions next year, we just need to keep mitigation in mind.
Yeah, we originally were planning, I don't know, did we initially plan in person? I know we were talking about hybrid. Well, I suppose we started planning before the pandemic even started in terms of sites, and then we moved to hybrid and thought, oh yeah, vaccines and everything will have it covered. But obviously by January we realized that wasn't going to happen. So here we are. Well, another question we had was, what strategies do faculty use to encourage students to present? So that's, of course, the other key to a good convention is lots of student presentations. What's worked well at your school?
Encouraging students to participate in research experiences for undergraduates is, I think, the most effective way. We have not offered those experiences at our school, but we encourage students to apply for them in other schools, and they come away with almost the anticipation that they're going to present that result somewhere.
And
For
I
us,
have
go
a
ahead.
doing research with me this semester, and I just sort of, for academic credit, I just kind of laid it out at the beginning of the semester. It's like, you're going to have to present this at least once, and if we can find two places, we have an on-campus thing, but I really wanted him to find something off campus, and our Iowa undergraduate thing was not happening this year. So I said, hey, this looks like a good opportunity to sign up and get a chance to present to. He gave his on-campus presentation on Wednesday, and it was mostly nursing students in the room because of who the previous talks were, and that's a tough crowd for a math research project.
For us, just having faculty member who assign either presentations in class or papers in class, and then it's, once a student's already done that work, it's much easier to, and maybe even has that experience, it's much easier to encourage them to, to find other avenues to present also.
We have a campus-wide program that we participate in called Discipline-Specific Honors. And a student that wants to go through that honors program in mathematics then is required to make, well, they're required to submit to try to present off campus, which usually means then they're accepted and then they go and present off campus.
One more question I have is, I'm just curious, what, has anyone been able to do any sort of COVID-friendly events as a KME chapter? Any suggestions there that you said, hey, this is, this, it either was maybe better than nothing for a year, or do you, or even better, do you have something that's like, hey, that works so well, we'll even do that when there isn't a pandemic? Any suggestions there for club events?
We had a speaker come in, one of our alumni, and give, she's a former KME member, and she came in and gave a talk at our officer induction ceremony. And it was socially distanced in a very large classroom, and it went out hybrid.
Mhm.
Dr. Burns, you said 2? We apparently had a second one I'm forgetting about. I apologize.
We've done a lot of virtual game nights here and there, and students have found, like the Scribble IO that they did last night. One of my students found that. We did that once. We've done some other things, board game arena. But that's about the extent of it. This was the first time we actually got together as a group, kind of distanced in a classroom to do this. But there are things you can do. Our university is using Teams instead of Zooms. We kind of can create a team for our club, and they can interact with audio or video or chat or whatever they want that way. So at least we've done something. It's still not quite the same.
What else?
We've been doing mostly what others have already said. We meet in a large room with social distancing, but we also offer a Zoom component. And so we've had a speaker who joined us by Zoom, and we've been playing online games like the games that our students led in last night.
Ours is pretty much the same, with the only real adjustment that we made at West Virginia Alpha. Every year we have a competition for high school students that our KME chapter and what we call the nerd clubs get together to put in, bio questions and physics questions and chem questions as well. And this year, of course, we couldn't bring in high school students to campus. That's just not okay. And the plans were to make one completely virtual, but then the high school kids are all burnt out for virtual stuff too. So ours got canceled, but everything else has been as much virtually as we could do, the virtual game nights and all of that.
Maybe by show of hands, I'm just curious, how many of your universities and colleges are completely online this semester? Is anybody in that? Anybody completely online that you're not meeting? Like, okay, so everybody has some in-person component to their classes this semester.
It varies by department for us. I mean, some things have to be in person, some things are all online, some things are kind of hybrid, but department heads here have had some leeway as to how we manage that.
Yeah, we're as much in person as we can be. I mean, if someone has health concerns, they're allowed to teach online and so forth. But for the most part, our classes are. But we have the 6-foot rule and those sorts of things. Well, throw it open to we've got about 9-10 minutes left. I'll throw it open to the council, especially those of you who are going to be returning questions you all have for the group that you might want to hear about for planning for future years.
Or do you have questions for us about anything? I mean, I can't think of a financial related question, but you may have questions for us.
I'll jump in with a quick question. This is Vanessa Williams. I'm at Missouri ADA and I'm the social media coordinator. Right now we have presence on Facebook and Twitter. Is there any other, we're looking at getting Instagram over the summer, but is there any other social media platform that your students use a lot that you think would be beneficial for us to be on?
That I hear about is not about social media, but I hear students talking about Venmo. Was that an option this year for paying for this conference? Venmo, it's a way that students can pay electronically. I've never done it. I don't know if anyone here has.
I don't think that the registration, Rhonda could answer that about registration. I don't think we did that, but I suspect some chapters have done that. I used Venmo to let students pay me their registration.
Oh, you did? Okay, you used Venmo for the registration. Okay, great.
I mean, for like student initiation fees to our chapter, we did that. And that helped because a lot of them weren't coming to campus at all.
So as far as the registration goes, we ran it through our university and they have a vendor, but it's certainly not Venmo. I don't know a lot about Venmo, but I think it is more of a personal banking kind of thing, like David said. So somebody could pay him personally their fees and then he would write a check perhaps. But we did not have that option to run it through our university.
There is a significant fee if you try to do it in any way other than a personal kind of thing. I mean, several percent fee plus I think an annual fee if you set up to do it like an organization or something.
I'd be interested to see in if how many people would think it's time to move to accepting credit card payment for initiation fees and other fees. I know we're going to take a hit, but it just might be time. So many people expect to pay electronically when they have a service like that. So the fact that they could submit the initiation report and pay at the same time and not have to worry about anything going out surface mail would appeal to a lot of chapters, I think.
Is there much of a charge for PayPal if that were used for those payments? Because I strongly agree with Dawn that would be very convenient to pay that way.
Former MAA section treasurer here, so I can comment on PayPal fees. It'll run you probably about 3%. There's a per transaction fee and then a percentage. And I think on what our initiation fees are, it'd probably come to about 3%. The other problem is if we do go that route, it's important to set the PayPal account up. It's hard to pass a PayPal account from one custodian to another. So when there's a change of treasurer, it's incredibly difficult, especially because they like to have they legally need a tax ID number. And most people just put their social security number in when they create that. So the section I used to be treasurer for, I think it was 6 treasurers back, still had their social security number and a phone number that PayPal would not let be removed from the account. So be very deliberate if we were to go with PayPal. There may be other options that would work.
And many departments I know of do not use PayPal. They have a department credit card. So if they're going to run it through the school books, they would have to do it by credit card and they wouldn't be able to use PayPal.
Well, PayPal, you can enter a credit card number. That's how our MAA section in Maryland, DC, Virginia did it, is you could use a PayPal account, or you could say, I just want to use my department credit card, and then you'd use your department or purchasing card or whatever, and it would go through just like any other, buying supplies from Staples or something using a credit card.
I will say, I think we've had discussions like that before. One of the issues, my wife is psychi chapter representative. She teaches psychology, but the difference with some of the other organizations is that they have a larger organization. They have full-time staff. They can actually function as a business, whereas all of the treasurer stuff is right now in my study at my house instead of in my office at school. And it's not that it would be impossible necessarily, but would have to completely revamp the process by which we do things, where the secretary receives the membership list and the payment and make sure things are recorded there properly. And then I record it financially and we kind of double check each other. The process of recording payments with the associated membership could be a rather complicated database problem that even larger organizations like Psychi have struggled with full-time staff to deal with it. So that's just some caveats coming from, we may do it in an antiquated way, but we also don't pay anybody to do it.
I noticed Jared asked the question earlier about locations for coming year's conferences. At the regional level, that would be up to the regional directors. I know there's been talk about if whoever was going to host last year, since it got canceled, they might be willing to host this year. I know in North Central, I think we've at least discussed that yesterday. I don't know if that decision's been made though yet. As far as national conferences, we try to spread it around the country. So last, in 2019, it was in the East. So we were shooting for Midwest this year, and obviously that didn't happen. But I think in 2 years, it's really anywhere would be on the table, since maybe we'll all be ready to travel somewhere in 2 years. I will be putting out a call for hosts at the end of the business meetings here in a few minutes. So anyone who's interested, I think the council for the next biennium would love to have some volunteers, because that's always a nice thing to check off the list. If you have a host, then you can start planning in advance. So. Well, I think we're out of time. Appreciate everyone's opinions, and the council will have a lot to think about here in the coming year, and hopefully the pandemic will come to a clear end, so that variable will be out, but we'll see. And according to the schedule, we've got a little 10-minute break. So I don't know who's in charge of the Zoom room, but I'm fine with leaving it on if people want to chit chat a little more, or of course you can chit chat with Coco, and we will meet back in the main room here in 10 minutes.
I want to say it's good to see our retired former officers with Bob Bailey and Harold Thomas and Arnie Hamill. It's been years since I've seen any of the three of you, and it's just a thrill to be able to see your faces.
This is great, guys. I haven't seen you for a long time. You're looking good. And did we ever think back in the day that we'd be doing this virtually?
No.
According to Brian, I think there was a discussion in some of the council meetings about virtual meetings, and I think it was rejected. So.
Rejected pretty quickly, I believe, according to the minutes.
Maybe it was virtuous.
So let's give us a little recap of the last 15, 20 years. Arnie, you want to go first? What are you up to? I miss not getting your maple syrup. You brought that one year. You're still mute.
Yeah, okay.
You're,
All
you're
right.
good now.
Well, retired in 2006. We live out in the country. There's a farm. We have a farm. We have neighbors that farm it, but we like to see what kind of crops are growing. And then we're involved, like you mentioned, Don, with maple syrup, a little village about 7 miles away called Shepherd, Michigan. We're one of the maple syrup producers. We're actually volunteers there, Mary and I. And we tap the trees in the village. Unlike a lot of people right now that have tubing, we have a couple woods on tubing, but so that's an exciting time. And we have a big maple syrup festival. Actually, there's a kind of a reduced one now that's going to happen this another week. We're going to drive through pancake meals. We'll be selling syrup outside. But that's a fun group to be with. I try to keep in touch with the KME people at Central Michigan University. And what are the things, Mary? Yeah. So it's sure good to see everyone, and really always enjoyed all the things we got to do over the years. So it's good to see Harold and Don and Brian and Bob and Rhonda. So thank you for this, doing this. I've enjoyed the talks all day long. Watched most of them, and good job for everyone, and thank all the people that put this together. It's quite a project.
Well, one of the side effects, the unexpected side effects, is that we got more past officers attending this one than we have ever had before. So the fact that you don't have to travel to get here was an unexpected blessing. So yeah, it was really exciting as the names started coming in about how things were going. How about you, Bob Bailey?
Yes, sir.
How are you doing? Are you still living in Canada?
Still living in Canada, yeah. And we're kind of boarded up right now because of the pandemic. We're self-isolated. I'm still trying to figure out how to use Zoom, as you can see, the mobile platform here. It's not really that windy here. It just seems that way. I used to play by ear, but I'm too old now, so I just fiddle with my whiskers.
I can't think of KME without that carry-on joke you told at one of the old conventions. That got the loudest groan of any joke I've heard at a convention. How about you, Harold? What's been going on with you?
I'd like to interrupt to say, well, with that kind of a teaser, we need to hear that joke.
Oh, Bob, can you tell the carry-on joke?
Yeah, the two brothers who lived in Arizona decided to go for a vacation. So they decided to pack their own baggage, and they arrived at the baggage. I don't know, I guess these days you probably couldn't get away with this, but the checker-inner said, would you like us to check these through? And the first brother said, no, I guess not. I said, well, why not? These are carry-on. It develops slowly.
Something about there being coyotes in the bags too.
Yeah, I'm not sure what it was, but they called it carry-on.
Harold,
gentlemen.
what have you been up to?
I guess it's time to laugh.
Yeah,
But
I think we need a new routine.
well, I've been retired from Pittsburgh State Math Department since 1998. Still going, and enjoy hearing from Arnie, especially at Christmas time, and talking about the Michigan syrup and so on. We've really enjoyed a lot of that. I keep in touch with Cynthia Huffman and Tim Flood, who are both active with the Kansas Alpha chapter, and I've seen their picture on Zoom here. Don't ask me why, but I'm like Bob trying to learn more about Zoom. But Cynthia and Tim were both former students of mine and absolute cream of the crop. They are the best. And Cynthia is very active in the National Council, and her role as historian now, and really proud of them. I saw Brian Dawson's picture also. That's another one of my former students from Pitt State that was one of the cream of the crop also. Hi, Brian. I say your picture just came back up. I haven't been on at the meeting very long. We've been out of town to Wichita, where I had to go to a funeral of my youngest brother out there, and I still have a twin brother living in Wichita, so we stayed overnight with them after not having seen them because of the COVID for golly, I guess it was our homecoming football game in 2019.
Wow.
So we enjoyed getting to see them finally.
Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for attending. It's great to see you and talk to you. I'm going to have to get into that business meeting since I think there's some things I'm going to have to do in it. But yeah, maybe we'll get a chance to talk a little bit later, but it really is great to catch up with you.
Yeah.
God bless.
Good to see you, Don.
The highlight. Thank you.
Hi, Arnie.
Yep, bye. How do we get out of this now?